Yes.
Hello, Madreshet Moria alumni and some students who are taping this in the class. Just very quickly, I'd like to share over a quick idea on Pesach. And the idea is as follows. We all know the famous line in the Haggadah, V'afilu kulanu chachamim, even if we're all the greatest Talmidei Chachamim, nevertheless, mitzvah aleinu l'saper b'Yetzias Mitzrayim. We have a mitzvah to talk about Yetzias Mitzrayim. And then there's a very interesting idea that comes at the end of that. The more you talk about Yetzias Mitzrayim, Harei Meshubach. That is very praiseworthy. And then the Meshubach Shalom asks a few questions, but the gist of his questions are as follows. I don't understand. There are many mitzvahs that you do, lulav, shofar, even eating matzahs, and we don't say that the more you do it, Harei Meshubach. Meaning we don't say that if on Sukkot you're sitting there the entire day with the lulav and esrog, the more you shake your lulav and esrog, Harei Meshubach. If anything, we say the opposite. If you keep on doing it the whole day, Harei Meshugah. But we don't say Meshubach. You know, if you're sitting there listening to shofar the entire day, that's not Harei Meshubach. Good. That's basically his question. Why is it Harei Meshubach? The more you talk about Yetzias Mitzrayim, the more it is Harei Meshubach, especially on Leil Seder. Because he asked another question. You could also say that every day we have a mitzvah of Yetzias Mitzrayim, and if every day we have a mitzvah of Yetzias Mitzrayim, so why isn't it Harei Meshubach? Every time you say Kriyat Shema, and you mention Kodesh Baruch Hu taking us out of Mitzrayim, why don't we say, say it, keep on saying it every day, Harei Meshubach? We don't say that. We only say that when you say Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim on the night of the Seder, that is Meshubach. So why is that? That's question number one. Question number two, he said that he brings down the following Rambam, where the Rambam writes very clearly that it is a mitzvah for a father to give over to his son. And then the Meshubach Shalom says, if you listen to the Rambam very carefully, it even seems that if the father is a bigger Talmid Chacham than the son, then he still has to give, if the son is a bigger Talmid Chacham than the father still has to give over to his son, which doesn't really make sense. Because if my son is a bigger Talmid Chacham than me, then why am I telling him about the Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim? Let him tell it to me. Meaning I'm going to tell my son, listen, this is what happened in this Makkah. And because my son's going to look at me and say, well, that's not what the Medrash says. Teresa doesn't say that way. The Rashba doesn't say that way. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you're a real big Talmid Chacham, so you tell me what happened. But we don't say that. We say, no, there's a mitzvah for me to give over to my son. Why is it a mitzvah dafka for me to give over to my son? If my son's a bigger Talmid Chacham, let him give it over to me. But we don't say that. We still say that we have to give it over to our children. So the Meshubach Shalom answers the following way. He says, the truth of the matter is, let's analyze what exactly is going on in the night of Seder. He says as follows. The night of Seder is really a Yom of Emunah. It's even more than a Yom of Emunah. It's a Rosh Hashanah for Emunah. Meaning on Rosh Hashanah, you get judged on if you're going to live or die, God forbid. You're going to get judged on how much money you're going to have for the next year. That's Rosh Hashanah, our regular Rosh Hashanah in Tishrei. Shavuot is also a Rosh Hashanah. Because Baruch Hu is looking at us on Shavuot, how you're relating to Torah. The way you relate to Torah, that's going to be your judgment on how you're going to relate to Torah for the next year. The Mefarshim tell us that Pesach and the night of Seder is a Rosh Hashanah for Emunas Hashem. And the more you relate somehow or another to Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim, that's going to be our level of judgment for Emunas Hashem. So what does this have to do with Emunas Hashem, Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim? That's the Meshubach Shalom, a beautiful idea. That when you hear it from your father, and your father hears it tells you something that he heard from his father, and he heard it from his grandfather, and it goes all the way back to Har Sinai, so that's the best way to ingrain inside of you this idea of Emunas Hashem. Yetzias Mitzrayim is such an important idea in the Jewish world, that's Kodesh Baruch Hu's revelation to us. And it's through that revelation that my great-great-great-grandfather saw it, and he passed it on to my great-great-grandfather, boom, 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 till myself. That's already a chizuk in our Emunas Hashem. And that's why Leil Seder, the more you talk about Yetzias Mitzrayim, and the more you hear about it, Harei Meshubach, because really what you're doing on the night of Pesach is you're working on your Emunas Hashem. When you hear it from your father, or if you're giving it over to the next generation, so then you're really working on this chain of Emunas Hashem. And it could be, that's why it says in the Meshubach Shalom, number one, that's why it's Harei Meshubach. And that you don't see by other mitzvahs. And number two, says in the Meshubach Shalom, that's exactly why, even if the son is a bigger Talmid Chacham than the father, it's not a question question of learning Yetzias Mitzrayim. That's not what Pesach is about. Go to yeshiva and learn about the Midrashim. The night of Seder is ingraining the fact that we heard Yetzias Mitzrayim from the previous generation and the previous generation. And that's what we're looking for in our Seder. And hopefully we try to make it meaningful and we try to make it beautiful. And we should all be zochet to a wonderful Seder and to a wonderful Yontif. And we should be zochet to eat Korban Pesach here in Yerushalayim, Ir HaKodesh. Enjoy yourselves, ladies. Bye-bye.